Real quickly, back to 1 Samuel 17, and let's do a little bit more before we go home tonight. Because David also wanted to honor God with his habits. God is either honored or dishonored by the habits of his servants. There's a lot of writing about this, the habits of highly successful people. Well, what are the habits of God's servants? Well, here are some habits that are really amazing. Have you noticed David's habits in 1 Samuel 17:20? This verse lists several. David is disciplined, responsible, trustworthy, and obedient. It says in verse 20, so David arose early in the morning. He had what I affectionately call mind over mattress. Okay? He could get up. You know what Proverbs says about the sluggard? They turn on their bed like a door on its hinges. They just flip-flop, 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 and they wear out the snooze button on their alarm. They just, it's just perpetual. Now, I'm an observer. I look at this auditorium, and the clock is right there. Did you know the same people come in the same number of minutes late almost every week? Did you know that? I noticed that. You choose to be 12 minutes late, 15 minutes late, 17, some of you 21. It's just like clockwork. I sit up in my office a lot of times finishing up my Sunday morning message, and I watch the Sunday school crowd come in. The same people are running across the parking lot every week at the same time. It's like their clock is off by, however many minutes. Do you know what? God wants us to honor Him with our habits. Some people have the habit of making everyone wait for them. Do you think that honors God? No. It's our choice. David rose early in the morning. He left the sheep with a keeper. He had a habit of being responsible. He disciplined his body. He said, get out of bed and get up, body. And the body did. And then he was responsible. He left the sheep with a keeper. This was the anointed king. This was the entertainer of the king. He didn't have to watch those sheep. He took his sheep and asked someone to watch them for him. He left the sheep with a keeper. And then he took the things. And this was important, David, and yet he took the things his dad sent to his brothers. He could have conveniently forgotten all that stuff, not messed around with it. And he went as Jesse commanded him. David wanted to honor God with his habits. David had some neat habits. He was disciplined. He was responsible. He was trustworthy. He was obedient. Do you really think that's the first time he acted that way? Do you think this was his first time that he had good habits? No. Be careful what habits you allow to grow up and take hold in your life. Every action and habit we allow has either a positive or a negative consequence in our lives. Beware of bad habits and sinful action, because sin always will pay us back. If you cultivate the flesh, then the scriptures say from the flesh will reap corruption. Sin always pays us back with boredom, guilt, shame, loneliness, confusion, emptiness, loss of purpose, not to speak of loss of rewards. If we have the habit of indulging ourselves, our flesh, we will lose our rewards. Obedience always produces eternal blessings. And finally, verse 25, and we'll come back to this. David, lastly, wanted to honor God with his life. I love this. He had a divine perspective. He was God-fearing. Immediately, David always thought of one thing. When he comes into a situation, he didn't think, what can I do for myself? What can I get out of this for myself? How can I advance myself? He thought, what can I do for the Lord? He wanted to honor the Lord with his life. Look at these last two verses, 17, 25, and 26. Chapter 17, 25th verse. So the men of Israel said, have you seen a man who has come up? Surely he has come up to defy Israel. And it shall be that the man who kills him, the king will enrich with great riches, and give him his daughter, and give him his father's house exemption from taxes. In other words, they were telling all the great rewards that someone could earn. But not David. He's not interested in that stuff. Verse 26, then David spoke to the men who stood by him and said, what shall be done for the man who kills this Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel? For this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should for who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God? He didn't say, How can I advance myself? How can I get the king's daughter? How can I get taxes off? How can I become superhero? He says, what can I do for God? This enemy is defying God. What are we going to do about that? David wanted to honor God with his life. God wants us as his servants to give our lives back to him. We sung about this morning. I leave you with a thought tonight. Give your life back to God. Say, lead, direct, use. How can you use me tomorrow at work? How can you use me at school? How can you use me tonight? Who do you want me to pray for if I can't sleep tonight? Who do you want me to give that tract to that I'm going to take and pray over? What do you want me to do this week until we gather again or you take me home? I am your servant. Let's stand before the Lord and commit ourselves back to him and tell him that we want to honor you, O God, with our lives.